There we go. Okay. So virtual whiteboards, there's a lot of options. And today I'm going to talk to you about 2 of them. But I can also, if you have specific things that you want to do, I know of many others. So we can also chat about better fits too, if these don't fit, maybe what you're hoping to get out of it. Some of the most common features of whiteboards are the ability to have multiple contributors. So great for things like brainstorming or whatever, where you want to have kind of multiple people, chime in about something. Kind of sticky note features. So if you do a lot of sticky note activities in person, this is a way to do it virtually. It's a great opportunity if you're maybe in a classroom that has just like a whiteboard in front, but you want to do kind of whiteboarding activities. People can be distributed and use this virtual environment to have a similar experience. Sometimes we're not in spaces where we can hang things on the wall or kind of do things like that. They often have some really basic drawing tools. Now, this is not a place to make illustrations, but like to do, basic visual communication. Those kinds of tools tend to be built in. There is text tools generally, and many of them have the opportunity to share some sort of media. Some of them are pretty scaled down, where it's like you can share some images, and others have like the gamut, like video, audio, multimedia interaction, like the whole gamut. Common uses of these platforms, there's many others, but these are kind of maybe the most common, is kind of brainstorming or ideation, diagramming, so relationships or kind of drawing lines between things and seeing kind of a visual organization of stuff. Planning, some of these have really good planning tools built in or ways to use it for planning. Collecting and curating, especially in the more full-featured ones. Problem solving and visual organization. So those are some of the behaviors that you can do. And these are great just in class, but also for meetings, right? When you're trying to do strategic planning in a department or something, these tools can be really helpful in those environments as well. There are a lot of whiteboard options out there, and they're growing kind of by the minute, right? The 2 I'm going to talk about are 2 that I've used pretty extensively in my own teaching. So I have a lot more in-depth knowledge of them. And that's Google Jamboard, which is a good entry-level tool, and Miro, which is like a full-featured tool. So kind of both ends of the spectrum we'll get our hands dirty with today. There's also Padlet, which is really good for certain kinds of activities, particularly if you're interested in collecting or curating. That's a really good tool for that. And Mural is kind of similar to Miro in some ways, and sometimes, unfortunately, they sound very similar. So people might be talking about one or the other, but they're pretty similar. So you might get confused about which one they're talking about. But again, there's many others. One thing to just be aware of is that with all whiteboarding tools, there are some accessibility issues. If someone needs to use a screen reader or something like that, they're not fully accessible. So you do want to be aware that there are some visual accessibility barriers with all of these tools at this time. The most accessible one is actually Padlet. They're aiming to meet kind of web standards by the fall. And they're the only ones that actually seem to have an accessibility plan. So I've reached out to the publishers, right, the people who create the software, and they seem the most promising, but they don't have some of the kinds of features. So depending on what you're trying to do, it might not kind of cut the mustard. So things you want to think about when you're considering what tool you want to do. One is like whether or not you need anonymity or if you need people to be identified. Some tools, everyone that's participating is anonymous. That could be really helpful and useful. And sometimes that's really not helpful or useful, right? So that's something to consider. You also want to think about the permissions that you're allowed to give folks and kind of the flexibility that's there with the kinds of things that you want to use it for. So the 2 tools that I'm going to show you do have abilities to kind of restrict to kind of a smaller group of folks. You can give edit privileges or just kind of view privileges. So just be aware that you want to be thinking about that. You want to also think about the kinds of activities you're expecting people to do. If you're doing just basic brainstorming and stuff, an entry-level tool like Jamboard is going to be sufficient, and it's a lot easier to learn. There's not as much complexity to it, so it's easy to quickly show someone how to do the basics and get them started. If you're going to use something long-term, or you're doing a really big project, or people are going to be collaborating for a long time, then a fully featured tool is probably a better option, but you need to build in time for people to learn how to use the tool. And just remember that. You also want to think about cost. Lucky for us, we're in education settings. So Jamboard does come as part of the Google Education Suite. So we have that free. And Miro also has kind of an education account that you can apply for. It's very easy to apply, but you do have to apply for it. And then you can have up to 100 team members kind of in your account. Students can also apply for an education account, and they don't get as many features as a teacher or instructor, but they do have a lot of features that they can get, and they can have their own little teams of up to 10. So that's handy too. And then you also want to think about accessibility, which is something I mentioned before. So if you're going to use a tool like this, you might want to start off by kind of warning people, right? Like, I'm planning on using this tool. I am aware of these particular barriers, and if that's going to be a problem for you, please let me know so that we can come up with an alternative. You know, that it's really a great tool. Like, these visual kind of spaces are really great for many people. And no matter what tool or space you pick, it's not going to be great for some people. So just remembering, kind of pointing out what some of those limitations are up front could be really helpful. So keyboard accessibility is a little bit of a problem, and screen reader accessibility is a bit of a problem. But other than that, it works pretty well for folks. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Jamboard, because that's the entry kind of level tool. So it's part of Google Suite. It's got very basic tools: text, image, sticky notes, drawing. And that's pretty much all it does. Not much more than that. Low barrier to entry, in that there's not a lot to learn. But it does have, and it looks kind of like this. So this is something from one of the workshops that we did, where you can easily have some text and have people contribute with sticky notes and kind of brainstorm. Irene, did you have a question?
Yes, Rebecca, thank you. Where do you find it in Google Suites? I mean, I've been a Zoom person for most of the pandemic. So where is the,
we're gonna jump. Yep, we're gonna jump in just a second to get there. So excellent. Give me just a second, and I'll show you exactly how to do it, and you'll get to use it too. This is another example of kind of, there's some basic drawing tools. There are some limitations I want to point out before we jump in, so you can kind of play around a little bit and see where some of the limitations are. One is that there's no document history. So in Google, we tend to think about that we have a history, we can go back and see who contributed what and whatever. That does not exist in Jamboard. It's mostly anonymous. However, when people are typing and then they're logged into their Google account, you will see them kind of putting a sticky note or something on, but then once it's there, it's not attached to a person. And that's a change. Like initially, previously, Jamboard, when you were putting stuff up, it didn't have, like, you couldn't even see who was putting stuff up, but that's not the case now if you're logged in. So just be aware of that. It's mostly anonymous after, like as an artifact. And then it has very limited design options. There's like 6 colors. You can't put in any like custom colors. Many of them are not actually accessible if you're layering them on top of each other. So you want to be pretty careful about that. And again, the accessibility things that I mentioned before. So I want to jump into our Jamboard here. I'm going to put it in the chat so you guys can jump in as well. And I'll show you where you can see it in. So if you're logged into your Google account, like if you're in, well, first of all, you can always type in jamboard.google.com, which is just handy to know, right? But if you're in a place like Docs or something else, let's see here. Oops, I didn't mean to go to a specific thing, but that's okay. If you click on the little Google Apps button, you will also see it, but you got to scroll down a little bit. I think I just went right here. So you can get to it from the little menu if you're in your email or if you're in Google Docs or something. So you can get there as well.
It's there. I can't. I just totally never saw it. Oh my God. Well, I wouldn't have known what it was. Jamboard.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm one of those people that just clicks on everything and then you kind of.
Yeah, awesome. Okay.
So you can create in a single Jamboard. You do have the ability to share it with folks, which is what I did. And you can set it up to kind of anyone that has the link can edit and contribute. You can also change it so that people can just view. And you can also change it so that it's limited to just SUNY Oswego folks as well. So just be aware that those permissions exist and you need to make sure you're in control of that. You can also add additional, like if it's a team of people who are going to do a couple of different brainstorms or something, you have this first board, but then you can hit the arrow button and add a second board and you can get back and forth between them. So you can have kind of a clean slate very easily. The main tools in here are a pen, which allows you to just draw with your mouse. There's an eraser, works exactly the same way as the pen. You just can erase stuff. There's a selection tool, so you can kind of move stuff around. And there's a sticky note tool. And so that's the sticky note feature is one that I use a lot in my classes in different situations. So you can change the color. It can be white or nothing too. And then you just literally type. That's it. And it adds it on. And you can move it around. You can also scale it. And there's some options for duplicating, deleting, and also bringing things to the front and behind if you want to layer them in a particular way. So one thing that I like to do is if we're doing a brainstorm or something, I would have a lot of people put stuff on the board and then maybe we want to find themes. So then you can move around sticky notes and kind of cluster them around themes or something like that. There is the ability to add images. So either from your camera, from a URL, or if it's in your Google Drive folder or something already. There are some additional tools for like drawing circles and kind of geometric shapes that are available as well. Arrows can be helpful, right, when we're doing basic diagrams and things. There is also the ability to make a text box. But there is like really limited formatting options. You can change the color to one of these 6 options, of which like the black is the only one that's really accessible on white. You can change the alignment and you can kind of pick one of these formats and that is it. So if you're trying to do some visual fancy thing, this isn't really the place. You're not going to have that capability. But if you're just trying to do some like down and dirty, quick brainstorming or something, it's a great tool. Because literally, if you're doing brainstorming, you would just show everyone how to use a sticky note and you're ready to go. And people can kind of jump in and use it. So I've seen you guys playing around a little bit. Do you have any questions on this one?
It wasn't letting me hit sticky. It wasn't letting me play around. So I don't know if you're just still in demonstration mode or.
No, let's see. Anyone should be able to jump in. Did you just click on the link in the chat?
I was trying to. Okay, so no, I was on the screen. So click on the link in the chat.
Yep.
There we go. Thank you. So,
you're welcome. So I think one
sticky note.
One piece that I wasn't clear about probably is like if you just go to jamboard.google.com, you come to like your Jamboards that you create, and you can create a new one with this button down in the bottom right. But if you're joining one, you use the URL to kind of get there. Totally skipped that step, Irene. That was my fault.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm really at the basics. So
that's okay.
You're in Blackboard or in Zoom. I'm usually in Zoom.
Yep.
So I would first have to open up my Jamboard.
Yep.
Have the link, put it in the chat box.
Yeah.
And then tell students click on the link and then you have your mutual whiteboard.
You got it.
Awesome. Yep. Thank you.
And so you can get that link in case you're not sure in this share button. You can copy the link right here.
Okay.
That's
right. So that's super helpful. So no matter what platform you're in, Blackboard or Zoom or wherever, first create your Jamboard, create your link, and then share it.
Yep. And I will often put like a prompt on ahead of time if I know what the activity is going to be. And, you know, that's it. Unfortunately, there isn't like a way to lock anything down. So anybody can kind of drag and drop and move. It's kind of a free for all.
So say you've had a really great Post-it note session, a lot of great ideas, and you want to save it for using it for some other class activity or just to have a record of it. It allows you to do that.
Yep, by default, like everything that we just did, if I go to like kind of the Jamboard hub in my account, which I just click the icon, these are all my Jamboards from my various classes. And
awesome. Automatically saves. Okay.
Yep, so it's automatically there. So that's similar to other kind of Google products. The other thing you can do if you don't want it to get edited after an activity, Irene, is go in and change your share settings. And you can say so people can only view it. And then it's like a stable record of what it was that you did.
Yeah, I can't imagine students running back to a whiteboard after class.
Probably not, but you know.
Oh my God, I gotta edit my sticky note. It's just not gonna happen. I don't
Probably
think.
not, no.
I don't know. Okay.
I haven't had too much trouble with that.
Okay.
Michael, is there anything that you want to check in about or ask about while we're in this platform?
I think I understand this one pretty well.
Okay.
Miro, I think I would be more interested in this one than Miro. But I guess Rebecca, the one thing I struggle with is, and I know this wasn't the main focus of your
it can be whatever you guys want it to be.
But like I want to use Discord, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm hesitant of like, I don't know, like all students have each other's emails, you know what I mean? So I'm just hesitant to like take the class into such an unknown place. But especially for the asynchronous class, like I really want to set up something, and it doesn't appear to be available on Blackboard, where people can just go and put a link or an idea or a thought or something. Like I want to have that space available to them. So I'm just trying to figure out what that'll be.
So Irene, Discord is a kind of like a chat space that tends to be historically used by gamers, but it also has audio and video in other ways that you can kind of just drop in and hang out. It's just like a space that you set up. Okay. There are some other alternatives to that as well that have some of the same features. And so one of them is Slack, which, you know, tends to be more of a industry kind of usage. So same kind of platform, but slightly different focus and maybe who uses it. Again, you have the ability to kind of do like direct messages and chat kind of things, video and whatever. Not as much of like the audio visual component. So that can be helpful for folks. That might be the thing that you want. And then a third alternative is actually something that we have as part of the Google Suite, which is just Google Chat, which you can set up rooms and we automatically have access to that and students already have that. So all three of those kind of offer an opportunity to have kind of asynchronous conversations that can be in real time, right? Because you can chat back and forth quickly. Feels kind of like text messaging. So that can be really beneficial. We did do a breakout in winter on Discord and Slack that you might want to check out, Michael, if you weren't able to attend that. I can't remember if you were there. That might give you some more insights into like how to use those spaces and how to manage them. But they can be really great, and they're great in combination with tools like this so that people can kind of collaborate in different ways. And you're right, Blackboard just doesn't have something that feels like chat text. And emailing just feels very formal and like effortful in a way that chat doesn't. And I've used Slack a lot in my classes, in part because it's like I chose that particular tool because it's a more of an industry standard in design. But you know, otherwise I might have picked Discord or something else. Students like interact with each other a lot, and they interact with me a lot.
On Slack?
Yeah.
So Rebecca, can I ask a follow-up then?
Yeah.
Did you ever have, because this is what I'm worried about, unfortunately. Did you ever have one student giving unwanted attention onto another student using the Slack or the Discord or like harassing them? Okay.
No, I haven't, luckily. I mean, I think it's a legitimate fear.
Yeah.
Part of it is, making sure that you have clear boundaries established and what it's supposed to be used for. And it may be that like the formality of a Slack space versus the informality of a Discord space may afford slightly different behaviors, right? Like there's something about the way that Slack is designed that may make it feel like it needs to be slightly more professional, informal, but professional communication. Right. Especially if they're used to using it for gaming and stuff.
Well, like you said the other day, the students don't even know how to use websites.
Yeah.
Or they're unfamiliar with using a website. So I'm trying to meet them where they're at,
Yeah, I have found like the chat capability just really helpful. Students will DM me or direct message me about stuff that they would never email me about or would never even meet with me about. Yeah. But the like direct message is like quick and easy. It feels not like scary. And then it can lead to having a meeting or whatever needs to happen. So I definitely have been able to help students out in that.
Does it require full sentences?
No, it does not. It's super informal.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are we good?
Helpful. Yeah.
All right. Which thing was I presenting from? Too many tabs. Let's see, here we go.
Rebecca, I was also happy that you said to Michelle that her desktop was cluttered, because I get I don't get anxious at a lot of things, but when I see people's cluttered desktops on Zoom, it always bothers me.
We're friends, so I felt like I could judge. I don't know.
I think I have a cluttered desktop. Oh dear.
When mine is like that, my solution is I have a folder called desktop on my desktop and I just put all the crap in there.
I have the exact same thing.
You did. I just read a book, Indistractable, and that's like a huge tip in the book to clean up your desktop and all of the, stress level that it increases and to put it in, but I still obviously haven't done it. So there's
the email version as well called Inbox Zero. I don't know if you're familiar with this strategy, but
no.
Like, let's say your email has gotten completely unwieldy and there's hundreds of things in your inbox and it's very stressful because there's 100 things or like John has like 10,000 things in his inbox and it like makes me twitch every time I see it. The strategy called Inbox Zero is literally make a folder and just put all the stuff that's in the inbox that like clearly you're never going to get to and just put it in a folder and have a clean slate and start over. You can always get to it.
How do you do that with Google email?
You just highlight them all and like put them in a folder.
Huh.
Yeah,
I may have to have a follow-up session with you because I've got like 10,000 plus. I keep it as my filing cabinet, basically.
That was the one thing I learned during sabbatical that has helped my mental health during COVID-19. It's like, you know what? I've lost it. I've lost all the things. I'm really behind. This is very stressful. Goodbye. And it's like, oh, I can breathe again. Okay. If it's really important, they'll get back to me.
All right. I'm going to follow back up with you on how to get that done. I have Michael saying select all. I'm going to do that after this session. So, because we tried moving, I had someone actually come in last year, this is pre-COVID, to try, we're off topic, but to sort them into folders by year, like just take out all the, and put them in a year folder. And it was just, we couldn't get it done. It was really difficult. I'm like, well, I don't, it's just frustrating, but I'll call you afterwards. Thanks.
Yeah, there was a book.
I don't want to burden your session with my email challenges.
There was a book I read that was about kind of getting organized as a faculty member, but I learned that in.
Okay.
Key takeaway. Start over. So the second tool I want to share with you, which I think is important so you have contrast between the two tools to really figure out what it is that you might need for the kinds of activities you want to do in class, is Miro. There's some really nice design customization available. So if you want to make it look pretty or whatever, you have that capability. You can change the fonts and change the colors. There's some additional collaboration tools. So if you're doing something that's asynchronous, you're not using a tool like Zoom, there's collaboration tools in Miro that allow for chat and video and sharing your screen and all the kinds of things that you might typically use Zoom for, but in an asynchronous session or in a separate kind of environment where you might not be doing video conferencing, it could be a nice alternative. It also has kind of permissions, chat built in as well, and commenting built in, as well as reactions. So if you're doing kind of a live session or whatever, there's some ways to kind of interact right in that platform. And they also have some really nice templates for certain kinds of activities that are super helpful depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And you can also create your own template. So if there's something you do regularly or an activity you do regularly, you can make kind of your own template that you can reuse, which I also think is handy. You can also, one thing that is kind of cool is that, you know, there's kind of multiple spaces you can be interacting with in Miro. And so if you're over here and you have students kind of wandering all over the place, first of all, you can see them wandering around. You can see their cursors. Handy. And there's a button that you can click that says like, bring everybody to me. And then voila, everybody's in the same place. So that can be really handy. You need this because there's an infinite whiteboard. It goes like Jamboard has like specific space. It's almost like a slide, right? Miro is like infinite space. You can keep spreading out, which has challenges sometimes associated with it, but also could be really liberating and helpful. And people can really find their own space within the same space. Kind of like in a classroom where you might spread out across the room or something.
Okay.
There's also a notes and agenda session. So if you want to do it for a particular like session, you can kind of have the agenda for the day and link to specific parts of the board, which is also helpful. There are things like voting and timers. So depending on the kinds of activities you're trying to do, that can be really handy. You can also create presentations directly from the whiteboard. So you can convert whiteboard things or diagrams you've created into slides and actually do slide presentations directly from Miro. And it also has some additional kind of meeting features. So this is one example of kind of some of the diagramming tools that are available. So you can see that you kind of have different shapes. You can, you know, connect things with arrows. You can make the arrows curvy and like, you know, fancy. And you can also see like here where it says like Trevor and Cassie and Leslie, those are people's cursors. So one thing that's cool is if you're doing a synchronous session and you want to know what people are up to, you can see what they're up to. And not in a creepy way, in a way that can be helpful and you can join or, you know, whatever. So that can be handy. And you can also find a person in the board. So in the same way that you can say, hey, everybody come to me, you can say, hey, I want to go find Trevor, and it will take you to where Trevor is, which can be handy. So I found this really helpful in kind of classes where we're doing a lot of activities that were creative and we needed to collaborate, but I wanted to kind of keep an eye on what everyone was doing so I could check in or help folks as they needed help, you know, in breakout rooms in Zoom or whatever. So this was one way of kind of being able to see what was up. This is also just a demonstration of all the wide variety of things you can kind of do. So they have things like templates. If you're doing like app design, they've got like things that look almost like a spreadsheet. You can embed Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets directly in Miro. You can embed video directly in Miro. You can do sticky note kinds of things like you could do in Jamboard. And you can also do like much more extensive kind of illustrations and typography things. So there's some limitations. One is that you kind of create it, you get a team, an education team when you sign up or you get kind of an education account, and you can have a team of 100 members. I'm currently in the process of figuring out how to manage that because I've kind of like got to that number. So now I need to figure out how to offload members. So I'm looking into that. So if you get to that point, I'll be able to help because I'm finding a solution now.
So just to clarify, so if you're running a class, like Michael had the example, he's running a class with 100 students in it. he's reached his cap. So is it safe to assume you got to go back and delete that class and then you're still in your 100 cap, or did they count it against you already?
I think what you can do is, there's two ways. One is like not having people join your team and just interact with your boards. I learned kind of the hard way, maybe how to interact with it. And then also you can keep boards if you create the boards and people contribute. I think you can then offload team members, but still have like the actual boards and stuff that people collaborated on.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're trying to do something with more than 100 people, then it is possible with the free account that you get as an educator, but you would maybe need to turn on kind of anonymous contributions or some of the other features that are built in that you would have access to. There are some startup costs to using this, not financial ones, just time ones, in terms of just learning how to use the tool and giving students or other collaborators time to kind of figure out how to use the tool. And I'd recommend kind of narrowing scope of what you want to introduce students to, and having use kind of a smaller subset of things and maybe introduce them as you need them. But a little practice with the tool is necessary with this one in a way that's not with Jamboard. The sticky note tool is equally as easy to use. So if you stick to just some basics, it's pretty easy to kind of get people up and running. But if you want to start using some of the more complex tools, some practice probably is necessary. I know that my students were a little overwhelmed the first week we used it, but by this, like they started getting into fancy stuff. But I had to kind of point out what the fancy stuff was and where it was. Like they weren't just exploring it on their own like I was. I was like, oh, what does this do? They weren't doing that unless like I specifically told them to do that. And I have design students, right? So you'd think they might be a little more exploratory with the design tools, not so much. And then a couple of the design tools are a little clunky if you're used to using actual professional design tools. And both actually Jamboard and Miro have app versions for like your phone and iPad, which are handy. The Miro version of the app, like Miro's apps are not as full featured as the kind of web-based version, which is kind of both good and bad. Right. One thing that's really handy on like the phone and tablet versions of both is like the drawing features are really handy to use that way. So if you're using a touch device, it's just so natural to kind of draw on it. So that those features are really handy no matter which tool you're using. And Miro has some really great ones where you can kind of take photos of stuff and automatically get it on your board, which is handy too. So you can like handwrite stuff and it will like convert it into a sticky note and stuff on the board, which is handy. Yeah, exploration of technology is definitely something that people still have a fear of, Michael, for sure. It's like, you can't really break it. There is a history kind of built into Miro, which is something that the Jamboard doesn't have. So then there's even more capability of just saying like, you're not really going to break this. And there's ways to kind of save backups, which I would recommend doing periodically if you're having people do things multiple class periods or something in the same document. And then it's like, they can't really break it because you can always get back to the last version you shared or you saved or whatever. So it's, it's what makes it a little less intimidating. So I'm going to invite you to this particular Miro board. You don't have to have an account to join, I don't believe. And I'm also going to show you what it looks like if I just go to it.
So Rebecca, is the same thinking, create a Miro board, create a link and share it to give everyone access to it, or post the link in an asynchronous environment, post the link in your Blackboard and tell people to go to that link to put their commentary on it. Okay.
And in Miro, you can actually even provide a link directly to a specific part of the board too, if you want. Like if you're going to keep working on the same board, multiple class periods or multiple sessions or multiple assignments, you can direct them to a specific part of the board.
So that's interesting. Okay.
So this is what it looks like as when I'm logged in to Miro. I'm part of 3 different teams. This is my personal kind of Miro account, which you need to have before you get an education account. And then this one here called Must Share Design Courses is my education account. And there's they call it projects, but really the way that educators would use it is organizing it by class.
Okay.
And then you can put boards inside of a class and invite students or collaborators to a specific folder or project.
Okay, I like that. So go back. Did you say you had to create a personal account before you could
Yeah, I
get
created an account first, and then I requested it to be upgraded to an educator account.
Okay. And you recommend we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's free. It's easy. I think you just have to like show a copy of your ID or something. It wasn't complicated. I got like permission like the next day or something. It was pretty quick. So once we're in here, I put some just random stuff in here so you can get a feel for like the extent or different kinds of things that you can put in a space. What you'll notice here.
Oh, I love Canvas.
There's a couple of things here. You'll notice that I have these kind of different things that are frames. And if you put content in those, you can actually view them in this bottom left-hand corner called frames. And it's more like a presentation. So you can easily, if you're trying to direct students around, setting things up as frames can be helpful. And then you can provide links to those specific frames. So that's handy. And you can also use this present mode down here, which just allows you to do kind of a presentation with it. So I tend to recommend organizing stuff in frames and just putting content on them because it's easier to navigate around. You'll notice that there's a lot more, I think I'm still in present mode here. Hold a second. There are many more tools in here than there are in Jamboard. A few to be aware of. One is the select tool that allows you to like click on stuff and move it around, right? So that's very similar to Jamboard. The sticky note feature is also very similar to Jamboard. So I'm just going to jump to that one because it's pretty similar. More choices. And there's also bulk mode, which means like if I want to put in a bunch of sticky notes at once, if you go in bulk mode, you can type them and do them one at a time, but just do it all in the same window without having to do as many clicks. Yeah, this is a great tool for mapping projects, relationships, and stuff. Totally, Michael. Yeah. So the sticky notes work the same. And you guys are welcome to just click and try anything. This is not precious. It's just a messy space to play in. So you can make sticky notes. What's cool here is you can change the font size. You can change some styles. You can change alignment. You have a little more control over that. You can also add little like emojis to your sticky notes. So if you're doing kind of a brainstorm and then you want people to provide some feedback, you could have them click on sticky notes that people put there and add little reactions to them. So that's a handy little feature. There's a ton of really cool templates. So this is the templates button. There are thousands, maybe not thousands, at least hundreds of templates available for different kinds of collaborative activities. So you can click these and then you can also create your own. So I created a bunch that I was using for my classes, like case study templates for kind of visual case studies. I had kind of an annotation assignment that had a particular format I wanted people to use. So I created templates that I had students use. And if I create a template that's in my team, students can use those templates as well, which is handy. So this team canvas is a template that I just popped in here. Another one that's really handy template is a team retrospective, and there's different ones, but I like this one that's called Start, Stop, Continue. So if they're working in a group persistently through the semester, I had multiple check-ins during the semester and had them use sticky notes to kind of answer the questions, start, stop, continue together as a little team and talk about them. So what should the team start doing? What should the team stop doing? And what should the team continue doing as just kind of a little check-in? That worked really well. I had no team issues, I think in part because we were doing that activity all semester. So issues kind of bubbled up and they talked about it as they arose without getting, we did it every couple weeks. So, things couldn't get too crazy. And then another really great template is this one right here, which is a Kanban board, which is for project management. So if you're working on big projects or you have students working on projects, this is a nice kind of team management where you can kind of type in tasks as a to-do list. You can tag specific people who are in your team. You can, color code them and that kind of thing. And then you can literally drag it. Okay, I'm working on this. This is in progress, or this is done. So it becomes a visual way of keeping track of a project. So if you're used to using project management tools, it works like that. It's just kind of a scaled down version of it, but built right into kind of this collaboration tool, which is handy. And then the other thing that's cool that I guess I'll point out, there's lots of features, right, that you can kind of explore. But one other one that I find handy is if you were to make like a diagram and you want to show some relationships. You click the object itself, and then there's these 4 blue dots. If you grab from a blue dot and click it, you can connect to other blue dots on other objects, which is cool. So great things for diagrams, and you can select whether or not it's like a wiggly line or if you want it to be kind of a straight line, depending on the kind of chart or whatever you're making. So this is a quick introduction to a complex tool, but it gives you at least some ideas of the scope of what you can do. There's also in the right-hand side this like note feature that allows you to make to-do lists or agendas and things as well. So you can see this has way more places to get lost in, but you can also embed all kinds of media and stuff too, which could be really handy depending on what you're trying to do in your class.
This seems like just an excellent tool for asynchronous environment if you're trying to get everyone to go to a spot, because they're really, aside from discussion board, there's few options to pull them in a easy, creative way. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for sharing this. It's great.
I did a lot of activities where I had students create their own frames in the same board, but made a frame with their name on it. And then, they did something in their frame. And then the next activity or the follow-up assignment would be to kind of provide feedback using sticky notes to each other's frames and stuff. So you can definitely facilitate that kind of interaction too.
Yeah, I love it. But in asynchronous, right? So it's still, you feel like you're kind of engaging with people. So I really like that. I have a leadership activity. So this is perfect. It's always a challenge in that asynchronous environment. So it's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, in any object, the other thing related to that, just based on what you were saying, Irene, that might be helpful is any object or frame or whatever you can click on and actually assign a comment specifically to the thing itself and tag a person. Oh. And then, so that actually facilitates like an actual conversation about something as well.
Oh, that is.
I love that it like can be any object.
I like it.
So
I like that team retrospective. I think across the board, we don't do a good job just across the board of training teams how to be good teams. We just assume that they will know what they have to do. And I love that you do that. It's huge help.
I like kind of toyed around with it a while back. It's something that I learned from kind of the IBM design teams. Like they do that. And I was like, yes, we should be doing this. And then, finding time, right? Like what's going to give. And then I just decided during the pandemic, we all needed more time to reflect. So I just like eliminated other things and brought in individual reflection more intentionally and this group reflection, which I think really, really made a big difference for the interactions that those teams were having and making it much more positive throughout the entire semester.
Keep doing that. Do not underestimate that. It's a huge skill out in the workforce when they leave. They just knowing how to do that well. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Who is that awesome young lady? Esther.